Welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Clemens Hoffman. Each week we will discuss tools, tips, and ways to radiate your best life ever, interviewing practitioners, authors, and luminaries to help you on your path. Wellness, joy, peace, abundance. What do you want to radiate? Hi there, welcome to the Radiate Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Christy, and today I am here with Lisa Adams, who is the owner of Spirit of Namaste Health and Wellness Center. I got it right. And they're found on the plaza. Lisa is a former nurse and is a wellness practitioner, does Trician, which we can talk a bit about, and many other things at Spirit of Namaste. But we're here actually today to talk about Lisa's new book. It is called America's Real Healthcare Crisis. Maybe we need a more pronounceable name. I don't know. America's Real Healthcare Crisis. And it's not what you think. It is definitely not what you think. The subtitle is Addressing the Cost of Chronic Unmanaged Stress Afflicting Our Hospitals, Clinics, and First Responders. And that's why we need to radiate peace, I think. Yeah. Because, managing that stress starts with self-care, doesn't it?
Right. I've been a nurse for over 25 years now. And I know what it's like to be in that life. I mean, we learn to, we're turned on from 6:45 a.m. until we leave at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And it may be one urgent situation after another. We're bombarded by noise, we're bombarded by emotions, we're bombarded by physical strain, moving patients around, moving beds around. So it's a way of life for us. So many of us, and personally, we don't know how to move out of that state of fight or flight. We're ready for an emergency all the time.
Well, you can't move out of it. Right. And so how do you feel like this is affecting our healthcare system?
It's pretty huge because if you think about it, the people who are providing care, and that includes healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, nursing assistants, ancillary staff, x-ray technicians, all those people, but also our first responders, our police, our firefighters, paramedics, EMS. We're all in the same boat. We're on the front lines. We meet people in their worst states. So if we are not in a state of peace and well-being, in our best state of peace and well-being, how can we teach these people, and how can we truly help these people through what they need to move through?
Oh, absolutely, right? Because, you don't really get a break many times when you're a nurse, when you're a first responder like that, but you've got to be able to shift gears. You've got to be able to recollect yourself. Right. There was something interesting here that you had in your book description online. The human body needs 20 minutes to physically recover from the exposure to life-threatening emergencies and the suffering of others. 20 minutes. I would have figured a lot more.
And I think that 20 minutes is just the amount of time for your body to recognize, okay, we are safe. We can move out of this state of fight or flight from our sympathetic nervous system to a state of rest, digest, and ease, which is our parasympathetic nervous system. And they work in opposition of each other. So that's the minimal amount of time that it takes to say, okay, reset.
Right.
I think maybe your thoughts are thinking, a big, scary emergency happened to you and you need a couple days to recover.
Right.
Obviously, ideally. But in our world, in a healthcare worker and a first responder's world, that's not a reality.
No.
So even if we can learn how to check in with ourselves throughout the day, and have some little practices, about how to redirect our nervous system to stop responding the way it is, even that little bit would be huge in creating change.
That is wonderful. And so, how does this affect our healthcare workers when they don't have that time to rest and repair?
Great question. So in my book, I share my personal experience as a nurse.
Yeah.
And I share some experiences when I was going through stress myself. So my early years were in pediatrics, and during the winter time, we were just busy. It was nonstop admitting, discharging, nonstop illness, and the children were sick. So we're nonstop throughout the day. We're physically tired. We're mentally tired. It's emotionally draining to see these little people suffer and their families. So if we can't rest and recharge ourselves, how can we be completely alert and at our best to assess these people, to give them the care that they need, to give them the attention that they need? We're so wound up in what we have to do as far as tasks and trying to fight the exhaustion. We're really not present. And the other term I use in my book is presenteeism, and that costs companies so much money. Presenteeism is...
So opposed to absenteeism.
Yes.
Okay, so what is presenteeism?
Means you're there, you're at work, you're physically there, but your mind is elsewhere. Right. Or you're exhausted. When you have a chronic backache or you have chronic headaches, it's hard to concentrate on what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely.
And in healthcare, first responders, we have such incredibly physical jobs, and we have such crazy sleep cycles. So many of us are sleep deprived. So we've got all these things going on. It's just virtually impossible for us to be at our best.
Right, and everything is set up so that make sure you're not at your best.
Right.
That's important. And I think I've got somebody very close in my life, my daughter's dad, who is an emergency room nurse and works nights and is in a trauma center, and I'm just having all kinds of thoughts about. I always knew it was hard, but I can imagine just how hard that is.
Right.
Yeah.
And on the other side of it, and this goes for police, firefighters,
right,
EMS, what we see in a day, may be hard to let go of. We get used to it. We see lots of things, and it becomes less shocking to us. But still, when you get home and you do power down, your emotions and your thoughts are still with those families and whatever suffering or trauma that you saw that day. It just doesn't go away. And most of us are in this because we really care about people and we want to help them.
Right. And so how can these people, the first responders, the nurses, those in the medical field, how can they, use that 20 minutes to their advantage, perhaps, or how can they get out of that sympathetic
A couple of things, that I teach in my wellness program are simply recognizing what are you reacting to? What are your stressors? Are these stressors anything that you have control over? If I have control over those stressors, what am I going to do about it?
Right.
Yeah, and am I willing to do those things that I can to create the change? And if you can, great, then you have a direction, and that should help you drop tension. If you don't have control, I say that's great too. File it, put it away.
Okay, yeah.
Use our energy for something else. The other thing is breath. When we take a real breath, that's a direct message to our nervous system to power down. We're not being chased by a tiger, right? If you see a bunny that's running across the road and it stops in the middle of the road, that bunny's not breathing like this. The bunny's probably breathing really short and shallow. And that's how most people breathe. When they come into my office, as a nurse, I was constantly teaching people about how to breathe to help manage your pain.
Right.
Just to help you get prepared for whatever procedure you might be going through.
Right.
So if we can practice using our breath, taking 1 to 3 deep breaths when you catch yourself reacting to a situation, it gives you an opportunity to kind of reset and go, okay, let me think, how am I reacting here, and how can I actually respond to that?
Right, because sometimes we get in that moment, especially when there's something shocking, there's an immediate emergency or trauma, we just kind of do freeze, don't we?
Absolutely.
And then just take a moment and figure out, okay, what's going on? Just stop.
Right.
but we can't always do that in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you talk to people in the workplaces? How are you getting this message out to the workplaces?
So I've developed a wellness program specifically for the workplace, and in that wellness program, one of the first things we talk about is, what does wellness mean to you? So
that's a
what
good point.
what wellness means to you, or what would bring a happy life for you, can be completely different from what it means to me.
Right.
And what I've seen in my practice is so many people are chasing what wellness means to somebody else. So saying, you're well and healthy if you exercise 3 times a week, or you're well and healthy if you're within this weight range, or you have this amount of body fat. So people have that idea of that's being well. Or you eat whole foods, or you don't eat any carbohydrates, that makes you healthy or well. So we hear these things in the media and in advertisements, but if you don't know what that means to you, you're going to chase your tail. You're going to chase your tail, finding, trying to do these things that you think are right and healthy, but it may not resonate with you.
Right.
Maybe healthy to you means that I have quiet time once a day, for an hour at 6 o'clock in the evening, and I connect with my family. That may be part of your wellness.
Right.
So that's a huge part of it. It's very individual. So we meet the people where they are. We help you decide what does wellness mean to you. And then we go into teaching you about the way your body responds to stress.
Good point.
Yeah. So this is what I've seen in the hospital and with most of my clients is we all know we have stress, but we don't realize the extent to how that is affecting our body on a daily basis. And they may not be aware of how many stressors you're reacting to on a daily basis. You can be reacting to physical stressors, obviously, if you have a physical job or trauma, past trauma, present trauma, surgeries, chronic pain.
Right.
We create tension. It can be mental. Is it work, finances, school? It's not anything that's actually happening to you, but we're perceiving it and our body's creating tension.
Absolutely.
It can be emotional. Is it relationships? Is it grief?
Do we hold on to that?
Yeah, mental illness, anxiety, depression. I know I have this and I'm trying to control it. It creates tension. And then we have chemical. Is things that we put on our body and in our body. Is it reactions to medications, reactions to foods that we have sensitivities to? And some of these things we're eating on a daily basis, multiple times a day.
Right.
And creating tension in our body. So depending on how many stresses a person has in their life that they're responding to, if we can create some awareness for them, and if they understand how they're responding, then we can start creating some change in their life. And so then we start talking about different tools to bring in.
Different tools. Yeah, you posted one on Facebook today.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that a minute?
Sure. Stop, drop, and breathe is one of my favorites. It's one of the first things I teach people. And stop, drop, and breathe is about when you find yourself reacting to a stressor, stop in that moment. And just like I just said, is this something that I even have control over?
Right.
Or even recognizing, what am I reacting to?
Sometimes we don't even know.
Exactly.
We've reacted and we don't even realize what it was in reaction to, right?
And if we're reacting to one of these 4 or 5 stressors, which one am I reacting to right now?
Right.
So creating some awareness. Stop. What am I reacting to? Do I have control over this? Okay, so that's the thought. The second one is drop. Drop your shoulders. Okay, and in this action of dropping our shoulders, check in with your body. Where am I holding tension in my body? In my response to this stressor, am I creating tension in my body?
Right.
And that's pretty huge because most of us go on throughout the day not recognizing where we're holding tension.
Exactly.
So stop, check in, what am I reacting to? Drop your shoulders.
Well, and drop your attention too.
Yeah.
Right, drop your focus.
To your body. What's happening right now? How am I reacting? Are my fists clenched? Are my teeth tight?
Right.
So checking in there. And then the last part is breathe. So most people forget how to take a real breath. As when you see, a lot of people have pets. And if you have pets and that pet lies down, flops down on the floor, and
They do.
yeah, that's a real breath.
It is.
And most of us breathe like the little bunny in the
That
road.
stops in the middle of the road.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Or we hold our breath.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes we find ourselves, I haven't breathed.
Yeah. So the last one is breath. In through your nose, and then just let your mouth drop open, and let yourself make that ha sound. And try to picture maybe you have a stopper in your belly button.
Oh,
and
nice.
Pulling that stopper out, just letting all that air. And I suggest 3 nice breaths. So this is a nice, direct message to our nervous system. Power down.
Yeah.
You're checking in with yourself. And now we have the opportunity to respond versus react.
Right. Respond versus react, yeah.
Right.
And then we can have the choice of, when we know that we're responding rather than reacting, we have the choice, how am I going to respond, rather than just that reaction, and it may or may not be the right response.
Right. And what you said about the choice is,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I see with most people, is we forget that we have a choice.
Right, exactly.
We always have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
We feel like we don't because we're in this fight or flight mode. We just have to keep going, and we're kind of, operating as robots.
Right.
But so it's, stop, drop, breathe, check in, give yourself a reset, and this whole exercise takes maybe a minute.
Maybe, at most.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and even in the medical community, in the medical field and profession, when we react, and I'm not a medical professional, but I'm just kind of using the collective we, but when there's a choice to be made, it's like you do have a choice. It's like, oh, this person is bleeding. Then you have a choice of what you're going to do, but you have to be present in order to make the best choice for that client, for that patient. Yeah. Right? Well, yeah.
A perfect example of what you're talking about is, I share in my book, was mentoring a new nurse, and I was on a busy orthopedic floor, and we had lots of people in pain. That's the big deal on an orthopedic floor. People have had surgeries, they have broken bones, so pain is a big issue. And this young nurse came to me right after we just gotten report on our patients, on our group of patients, and she came to me right after that. We hadn't even seen any of our patients yet, and she asked me, should I go and give Joe Cool in room 339 his pain medicine now? And I said, have you seen him? Have you asked him?
Right.
She was so in that mode of a robot. Here's what I have to do, here are my tasks. And she was nervous, and she knew that, these people had big surgeries or injuries. So instead of just saying, let me go see this human,
right,
and assess them as a human, how are you?
Right.
It didn't occur to her. So,
right.
And that's how we're training them. We're bringing them
every
in
4 hours. You're supposed to give them this, right? Right, rather than, use your discernment.
Right.
Right, and you have the power, and I think many times when we realize that we do have the power to make choices, we make them more confidently.
Right.
And that alone can alleviate stress.
And just think, if this young nurse had been more connected to herself,
right,
and checked in, did a stop, drop, and breathe, she's more able to go in and help this patient who may be in pain and say, let's do some breathing together. It's huge.
That is huge.
Breath is huge in pain control and anxiety.
Yeah.
And, those are huge issues when patients are in the hospital.
Oh, that is a huge issue. Well, just a deep breath can reset the vagus nerve and get you out of just that fight or flight.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I teach meditation in the corporate setting, and we talk about the breath all the time. It's so important. And even in an office setting, you talking about the trauma of, somebody's in pain, somebody's bleeding, somebody's being shot, or there's some medical trauma. But in the corporate workplace, of course, there's a deadline. I've got a meeting and I'm not prepared.
Right.
My boss is coming in and is angry at me. What do I do? Trauma's trauma.
And it's a perception.
It is a perception,
Right.
isn't it?
And your nervous system doesn't differentiate between, is a tiger chasing me, or is this the deadline that I have next week? Right? I'm reacting, my body's reacting the same way.
Right.
And so you're absolutely right,
It responds the same way. And so some of the tools are the same. We can stop, drop, and breathe before a meeting,
Right.
Before, turning in a report or while writing a report, right? So many of these, in the corporate setting, so many of these decisions and stressors can be arbitrary. There are things that we set on ourselves, and even at home.
Right.
Exactly. Like, oh my God, I didn't get something for dinner, or I forgot to mail that card, or something like this. So many of these things can be self-imposed.
Right.
And so, these techniques can help in so many different ways. But for the medical community, your book talks about this is a healthcare crisis.
That's the healthcare crisis that I see because I lived it.
Yes.
And it affected me. I was working as a nurse, 12-hour shifts. I was working part-time, and I had my business. So for about 8 of those years, I did both things. Really unreasonable schedule that, most people couldn't keep. But so many of my coworkers had other jobs.
Right.
Or busy families.
Right.
Or things that we kept up with, or we did extra shifts.
Yeah.
And I was guilty of that, always picking up an extra shift, until I got to the point my father passed away, and I had to go to New Mexico to the services and all that. When I came back after my 4 days of bereavement, and I got on the floor and got report, and I found myself not wanting to go into the rooms because my patients were really ill. I worked on a renal transplant unit.
Wow.
So these people were sick, and it was way too fresh.
Yeah.
They were my father's age. A couple of them, one of them had been put on palliative care, and a couple of them were really close to the end of their lives. And I didn't realize until the end of the day. I felt anxious all day and struggled to get through the day. But that night, I got home and I found myself sitting on my couch with a box of Famous Amos cookies, just eating mindlessly and crying. And it occurred to me at that moment that I was too busy to grieve my dad's death.
Wow.
So it took a huge realization for me to say, wow, this isn't working. And I need to do something else. So I've had the idea of writing a book about our healthcare system and the stress and how we're not able to teach people how to be well. So you think about this young nurse, and I talked about her being able to help this man through his pain.
Right.
If we don't know how to get there ourselves, look at all of the opportunities, and this includes first responders, police, firemen. Just think about the traumatic situations that they run into.
They are tragic situations.
And just think, if I can't check in with myself, how can I help them fully?
Right.
Check in with themselves. So
right.
To me, it's utmost urgent that we get to these people and get to corporate America as well, because we're all in that same boat. The healthcare is that's been my life, and I'm most familiar with that. And it is urgent because I believe that people who are in the system can change the system.
That's a very good point. And I think, too, it tends to trickle out.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily trickle down, but these ideas catch like wildfire.
Right.
And can be applicable to many situations. Not just the emergency room or the streets or the ambulance, right? And having been in situations where I've needed emergency care, where I've been very, very sick, having someone who is present and not exhibiting stress is so much more healing and centering. It makes me feel better as a healthcare consumer, right? And your patients, of course, are going to respond better if you've had a moment, taken a moment, I should say, because we all have the moment.
Right.
But if we take the moment
Right.
to check in with ourselves.
Hi, this is Christy. I just want to say that we here at Radiate Wellness hope you're enjoying this podcast. It's free to you, and we hope that you find it informative and inspirational. Heck, even fun. We have just 3 small asks of you to help us radiate growth. First, please hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on. That way, you'll receive a notification every time that we have a new podcast episode out. Next, please give us a thumbs up, a like, or a 5-star review. If you're feeling inspired, a positive review wouldn't hurt. These 2 small things will help others find us when they're searching for great podcasts. Finally, please tell your friends about the Radiate Wellness podcast. Better yet, show them how to find us and how to subscribe. If everyone did that, we would double our audience. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate it.
I'll share another little example with you. I broke my leg last spring.
I remember that was
And
bad.
yeah, it was a pretty significant break. It was broken in 3 places. And I was sitting in the emergency room, and my leg had not been splinted or anything. I hadn't been x-rayed, and I was telling them that it was broken for sure. I knew, and it was spasming. And the young nurse that I had never checked in with me. She had her back to me the whole time and was doing her questions. She had her assessments that she had to do. She never looked at me until I asked her to help me.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
isn't that profound?
Wow.
But
wow.
that's just the way they're trained. You've got to get these things done, and all of these things that we're doing, the charting that we designated to do within a certain amount of time. It's all about covering yourself legally. And it's a sad reality. 25, 30 years ago when I started in healthcare, we still wrote notes in a chart. And you actually looked at your patient, went back, wrote down what you saw.
Right.
And today it's a really different world. It's just so nonstop. And she never caught on that she wasn't connecting with me until I was having terrible spasms, and I had to really kind of yell out and say, I really need help right now. And then she got scared.
I might get in trouble.
Yeah, where she just realized, wow, this person's in distress. And I just come in from a car accident with a broken. So it's interesting that, it's a great example of not being connected to your own self. She was stressed out. I've been stressed out when I've been at work like that.
Oh, absolutely. It's hard to be present when you're stressed out like that. So it's, I talked about we can all have stress in our lives.
Yeah.
You could be a stay-at-home mom and have stress. You can
Absolutely.
be a receptionist in a company. You have stress. You be a medical care worker and you have stress. We all have that, but it's being present. And I forgot where I was going with that, but that's. But I think it's important that we all be present, and we just know that we can check in, right? That it's going to affect us in different ways, right?
And so that's kind of my platform, and with the book, the book is specifically focused towards first responders and healthcare workers, but to everyone, it's teaching you to recognize how your body responds to stress.
Yeah.
So then we can create some change.
It's mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and being aware of what your emotions are. Sometimes we don't even know what emotions we're feeling.
Right.
And then knowing where you're feeling them in your body. In meditation class, we work on the relaxation response, and we talk about how when you're feeling stressed, just notice what your stress response is. Where do you feel it first in your body? And then notice, is it coming from me? Am I picking it up from somebody else? And just having that mindfulness part of it.
Right.
Right? And taking that breath. And something about breath that I did want to just ask a bit about, and you can talk about this as much as you'd like to, but you practice Trician. I know that when I've had Trician sessions, and we call it flow. So when I receive a flow session, it's a breath that I can never seem to take on my own. It's this amazing breath where you feel like your body is just expanding and just cannot, it's like there's no limit. Right? So I feel like that's important. Is that a part of flow? Is that breath?
Well, the part of flow that you're feeling with the breath is just the perfect example of us being unaware.
Yeah.
Unaware that you are doing the bunny breathing.
Right.
You're unaware of that.
I'm a meditation teacher. Right.
I tell my clients that all the time. It's like, this is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
And it still happens to me.
Yeah.
So it's our stressors, First of all, being aware of what are my stressors, how am I reacting, and what is that doing to my body? So it's a process. It takes a process. And that's where I've seen people drop off, like I said earlier, is if we don't have that awareness, it's hard to create change. We can try, we can go through the motions to create change, but it won't last. We'll end up responding in our own, our previous patterns of reacting to stress.
Sure.
So Trician is about connecting to the nervous system directly via the spinal column. And our nervous system consists of our brain and spinal cord. And our spinal cord has spinal nerves that come off of it. This is central control in our body, right? Everything goes through here. It's like the main breaker box in your house, in your electrical system, right? Everything is routed through there. So if you have restrictions along those spinal nerves, when your body creates tension and reacts, so all that communication, those spinal nerves, direct everything to your respiratory system, to your digestive system, to your reproduction system, to muscles, skeletal system. So if that gets restricted, then we have restriction not only in movement, but we have restriction in our physiology, our digestion, our reproduction. So what you're noticing when you have Trician is when your body actually drops tension as a result of this gentle touch along the spinal column. Maybe a breaker that's turned off. With the gentle touch, that breaker turns back on because our body's amazing. It's so smart.
Absolutely.
So it knows to do that, drops tension throughout your spinal column, and it can start doing its work. And so you will spontaneously take a nice deep breath because your body's getting the message, oh, power down.
That's how that works. That's very interesting. And I know it takes a long time to learn Trician and become adept at it.
Yeah.
So you've been working on it a long time.
Yeah, I love it, yes.
Yeah, it's wonderful. That's just one of the modalities that you practice. Yeah, what else do you have in your toolkit?
Well, I do health and wellness coaching. I do some private health and wellness coaching. And then, the big push now is to get out into corporate wellness, workplace wellness, organizations, where we can get as many people as possible in one room and talk about this.
Absolutely.
Because it is America's healthcare crisis, in my opinion, is our chronic stress.
Yeah, the chronic stress, it does so many things to our body.
Yeah. This is a statistic from the Centers for Disease Control. 90% of disease in this country is stress-related.
I don't doubt it at all.
90%. So, I've been in healthcare a long time, and in those 25 years, the top 10 diseases that we were dying from 25 years ago, they're still the same top 10.
Really?
They've changed positions a little bit, and there's maybe a new one, and then it's lung cancer in women.
Oh, wow.
But they're all pretty much the same, yet we're spending like $3.5 trillion in healthcare. So our spending has quadrupled, but we're not changing.
Right.
And what I've seen is the response to stress. So we've got to change what we're doing.
Well, we have to change it on so many different levels as well. It's more systemic than I think that anyone is willing to admit. So our spending, our earning, our everything, and the way that we have things, our society set up.
Right. It's kind of a badge of honor.
It is.
And for lack of a better word, as to how busy am I?
It really
to add
is.
one more thing. Like saying no is a bad word.
I remember one of my corporate jobs, and I will not name names, but it was a badge of honor. You come in on Monday, it's like, well, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I was here till 8 o'clock on Friday, then I took a bunch of work home over the weekend. What did you do? Oh, well, I was here until 10 on Friday, and I took a bunch of work home, and I worked all weekend. So it was a badge of honor to show how much little private time you had and downtime you had.
Right.
because you just weren't working hard enough if you didn't.
Right. And, when I do workplace wellness or I do lunch and learns, one of the first things during my presentation on Stop the Cycle of Stress, one of the first things I ask the participants is I want you to write down 3 things that are most important to you in your life. And I don't ask them to share, but I just say, write it down and set it aside. And then at the end of the session, after we've talking about stressors and how our body responds to stress, and I ask them to refer back to those 3 things that are most important to you in your life, and I say, if I followed you around for a week, would I be able to tell what those most important things in your life were?
Wow.
And what you just said would, exhibit probably not. Because most people won't say work.
Right.
Some do, and that's okay. If you enjoy your work, that's fabulous.
Right.
But most people say it's family, health, spiritual. And so, where are you spending that time? And so, it's just, we need to stop. We need to stop. We need to connect with ourselves. We need to connect with people around us. We need community, and we're losing that. And
we are losing that. Oh, it's so interesting. The last guest that we had on this podcast was Reverend Randy Fickey.
Yeah.
Unity Southeast, and it's all about community. But, it used to be where our community was there in our neighborhoods, in our community, in our physical community, but we're having to create it now. Right? And I think social media has contributed to that.
Absolutely. Well, electronics in general.
Right.
How many times have you seen a family sitting at dinner at a restaurant and everybody has their phone?
Exactly.
They're not talking, they're not connecting. And then we have our computers when we get home, we have our television, we're turned on all the time.
All the time.
And so really, I know of some children, especially high school and middle school, who think that their community is their online game playing.
Right.
That's not community. And I think we're probably similar age. I had a community of friends.
Absolutely.
And we got together. We had to ride our bikes to meet each other. And we played games and we solved problems together and we went through things together.
Right.
These children, it's virtual. It's not, and they're living through a game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what they think is connection, sadly, is not. It's a form of connecting.
It's a form of, but it doesn't replace the rest of it.
No. Interacting,
Interacting does.
with real humans. We're missing
Go
that.
figure. I know there's also, the flip side in a way that I have friendships on social media that are very good friendships, very real friendships, but we've never met in real life. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I took a trip earlier this summer and spent a month in Europe and met some of these people that we've been corresponding with, and it's like,
fun.
Wow, right? So there's perhaps good and bad, but I do think overall a sense of community is needed so much. And I don't know if you're familiar with TVH here in town in Kansas City. Well, it's in the Olathe part of town. But they've got a fantastic wellness program. And Coach Lucy was a guest on the podcast, and she's a full believer in wellness programs, right? Wellness in the workplace. And then for companies who have these good wellness programs, I mean, it perhaps is not so altruistic as that, because it does affect our bottom line when
Absolutely.
our employees are healthy, happy, connected, present. Right.
Just think about mistakes.
When
we're not present, we're there, we're doing our work, but we're making mistakes because we're not mindful of what we're doing. I'm not my most alert. Example, the young woman that was taking care of me, had I started developing a blood clot, and, not stabilizing, nobody put ice on the wound. There's nothing done, but it just didn't occur to her. And she's working in an emergency room. So, lots of factors going in there, being trained. And what I've seen too in organizations is, the middle and upper management, they're the most stressed out.
Absolutely.
The ground workers are stressed out. We're physically tired. But the middle management and the people who have to get these people into these places and solve all these put out all these fires,
Right.
they're too exhausted to recognize, just like this young lady was too exhausted to recognize what was going on right in front of her. They're too exhausted to recognize their employees. So,
Wow.
it's at many levels. But if we don't have the opportunity to stop and connect to ourselves and figure out what is going on with me, how do we know what we need?
Right.
And then how do we know if our needs are being met if we don't know what our needs are?
That's a good point.
Am I in control of my yeses and my nos? So many of us are not.
Or we perceive we are not, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or we think that we're not, but we do have
Yeah.
some level of control, and that's why we have healthcare provided by people rather than something that's automated, because a person has discretion and can make decisions, right? Whereas some sort of automated thing will not. It just has protocols. So we can make choices and we can make decisions, but we can also make mistakes. And in the medical field, that's a big deal.
Right.
You make a mistake in the medical field, and it has a lot of ramifications.
Right. I would say in the hospital setting, there's statistics in my book, but in healthcare settings, that is one of the biggest expenses are
Medical mistakes.
medical mistakes.
No, absolutely.
And then the next is probably, absenteeism and, workman's comp,
Oh, sure.
injuries on the job.
Right. And sometimes preventable injuries,
Absolutely.
just by
It's
being
always-
mindful and aware of what your surroundings are and what's going on, and spills and all kinds of different things. Also, I would imagine in the healthcare field would be, the physical health of the people working,
Right.
right? And for healthcare workers, they see the most stress and, have poor stress responses much of the time. I can't help but notice that many in the medical field just don't look healthy.
No, we're overweight. We're sleep deprived. We're overweight. We are stressed out. We have brain fog. We have difficulty thinking just because of those things. We're so turned on, but it's such a vicious cycle when we don't sleep well. We grab that caffeine to wake us up, and our body is still in this fight or flight mode because we didn't sleep. It's going, we're going to conserve energy.
Right.
And so when your body's in that state, you crave carbohydrates for quick energy.
Right.
And so healthcare workers, we're kind of constantly in that state. Man, there's nothing better than a handful of
Famous Amos
yeah,
cookies.
famous Amos cookies or hot tamales at 4
Oh,
o'clock in the
sure.
afternoon. Say,
Right.
some sugar is going to give me energy.
Yeah.
And it's the exact opposite. We're just perpetuating that cycle of craving carbohydrates, eating carbohydrates, storing fat.
Right, absolutely. And what's usually in the break room? Donuts or candy or something like that.
And we reach for the caffeine thinking that's going to give us energy, but actually most caffeinated drinks are kind of dehydrating.
They sure are.
And so what our body needs most of the time is water.
Right. And then sometimes we are so busy that we don't even want to drink water because then I have to go fill up and then I have to go let it out.
Right.
Right. And I'm just too busy.
Yeah. I remember being a pediatric nurse, and I was pregnant my first year as a nurse, and you might get a bathroom break at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because you would just forget that you had to. So we were so busy. And it's always a joke that nurses have, bladders, gallon-sized bladders.
Oh, yeah. And, it might be, it's nearly the end of my shift and I'm just getting a bathroom break. Right? But, we kind of get into this mode of my job is so important. I am so important. I am so valuable to this. They cannot do without me for the 3 minutes it takes to fill up my water and have a bathroom break. Right? And so I think that, this is yet another thing that we can look at in society. It's like recognizing that we are humans with bodies, that bodies have needs.
Right.
And we should make that a priority so that we can make the people we're working for and working with a priority as well.
One of the things that I wished for the most when I was a nurse, I can remember when we would celebrate Nurses Week once a year, and it was always and they did wonderful, nice things for us, but most times what we got every day was some kind of treat.
Yeah.
Kettle corn one day, smoothies the next day, smoothies that are full of sugar and
Yep.
dairy. But it was always some kind of food, or we would have a pancake breakfast, or we got donuts and coffee as we walked into the building. Very nice and thoughtful, but I remember thinking, you know what I would really like? I would just like a real lunch break.
Right.
I would like to sit and eat my lunch without having to answer my pager
Right.
2 or 3 times, 3 or 4 times during my lunch break.
Right.
And I would like to have a quiet place to eat. Usually in the break room, we have the TV blaring, we have
Right.
everybody's pagers going off,
Right.
we have the doors opening and closing.
Right.
Should be a special place in every building, I believe, in every workplace, not just for hospitals and first responders, but a place where you can be quiet,
And maybe some lights that you can
dim, connect to yourself,
Yeah.
really let your body have that 20-minute rest.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, your body's in no condition to eat when it's in that fight or flight mode. And so what we're doing when we're eating in that state is we're storing fat.
Yeah. Because you don't digest it.
Right. So it's huge. That's one of my, my big suggestions in my book and is in my wellness program is
Right.
that, to create a space in your workplace for your family that you have, that you can go to and say, I'm going to go be quiet.
And then have people respect that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, she's just taking a break. Let's go bug her.
Yeah.
Right? Let's go
Yeah.
ask her. It's like, I'm sorry to bother you. I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
5 minutes later.
Yeah.
Right?
We used to have one doctor in particular, and he would find out his nurses' names first thing in the morning, and because he would find you wherever you were. If you were in a patient's room, he wanted you to help him with his problem. If you were in the lunchroom, he would go in there and he would find you, but he would find out your name.
So he could at least call you by name.
Yeah. But the reason he did that is that he wanted to know where you were when he wanted his question. And bless his heart, he struggled with anxiety.
Sure. Right.
yeah.
I think this is a real need because, we go, the people in the service industry, the people who are servers, people who are helpers in the medical field, in the wellness field, we are full of anxiety. We want to help. We want to serve. We take people's stuff on. It's so important to have that self-care aspect.
Right.
But we're the last ones to give that to ourselves.
Exactly.
Right?
And it's a learned behavior. We learn. I left nursing for a year. I think it was before I finally left for a year, a few years back. And then I ended up going back. And when I went back to interview, I went up to this floor, and it was the strangest sensation. As I walked up onto the unit, my reaction was to go and hang up my purse in the break room and start working. It was just an automatic response.
Right.
I kind of laughed at myself, and then I thought, well, wow, that is sad because I've been away for a year.
Right.
But it was just automatic. I was a robot. I got in there, and I was just going for an interview.
Right.
So, we have to learn how to get ourselves out of that state. And that's what I do in my wellness program.
That's wonderful.
We talk about awareness, then we talk about starting to create little practices, small changes to create, lasting change, or small changes to create, awareness that you can take with you all the time.
And not just in the workplace.
Right. And remember that you have control.
We do. We have control. So if somebody wanted to get your book, for example, where would they go to get your book?
You can get my book on my website, which is spiritofnamaste.com.
Okay.
And you can also get it through Amazon.
Right.
And it's also available as Kindle. So you can get it,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah, you're wonderful. Excellent. And it looks like it's a pretty quick read too.
It is.
So this is really great. And then did you get it produced here in town?
Yeah, I am the publisher.
You are the publisher.
Yeah, so my printer is a Vervante.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. You sent me the link. Wonderful. Wonderful. It's got a nice write-up on the back. So this is I think it's going to be a very important book, and I would really love for it to be required reading.
Yeah, that
Right?
would be great. Right, for medical schools, nursing schools, EMS, first responders.
Absolutely.
Police.
Police Academy, absolutely. Have a copy of this in every break room
Right.
rather than a tray of donuts.
Yeah.
in every break room.
Right.
I think that'd be wonderful. So spiritofnamaste.com. The book, again, is America's Real Healthcare Crisis, addressing the cost of chronic, unmanaged stress afflicting our hospitals, clinics, and first responders. Well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you for having
me. It was
me.
really interesting.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Thanks.
Radiate Wellness is a community of holistic and alternative healers and consultants based in the Kansas City area, dedicated to helping you create spiritual, energetic, and physical well-being. To learn more about our practitioners, services, classes, and events, or to schedule an appointment, visit us at radiatewellnesscommunity.com.